Hey, what up, guys? Now, what we want to know about is Immortal Zamasu Timeline. Why isn't he 6 feet under? Meaning, why is he not dead like our present timeline? You know what's happening is Zamasu is going to get killed by Beerus. What we want to know is what transpired in Immortal Zamasu's time that has kept him alive. Now, I'm going to start off by saying that in order to stop an infinite loop from happening, meaning an infinite chain of events happening, whereby Goku has to visit Zamasu for Zamasu to sort of like hate the ninjas and hate the Saiyans, and thereby going into the future and, picking on Goku and having Goku's body, and then having to sort of like have Trunks go back in time for that to reoccur over and over again. In order to make sense of this and to avoid a loop, this is what I believe happened, right? Which might make sense on how this cycle began and it doesn't become a loop, an endless reoccurring event. Now, picture this, guys. His future, Immortal Zamasu's future, he, first of all, didn't get visited by Goku. So that event didn't happen. So Goku has not visited Zamasu. So Zamasu at the moment is a bit like our present Zamasu, fighting amongst himself, doesn't know what to do, taking orders from Goasu. And this is where some of the events are basically occurring similarly to the events that were happening in the present, meaning he doesn't really know about Goku as much as he did in the present timeline because he hasn't fought him. And because there was no suspicion by Goku or Beerus or Whis that he's going to do all these things, they didn't visit him. So they didn't bother visiting him because there was obviously no threat happening. So what must have happened is Zamasu must have learnt who Goku is and all these people through watching the Barbarians and watching GodTube, watching TV, where he sees Goku and all these really powerful humans who are kind of like very powerful, and he discovers that Goku has God Ki, and he's thinking, hold on, why are humans being given God Ki? And I think that's where his story kind of is almost like our story, but without the involvement of Beerus and Goku and Whis. That's what happened on his timeline. So he must have done what he, was originally planning to do, which was go to Zuno, threaten him, tell me where the balls are, tell me where the Super Balls are, and tell me about a little bit more about Goku. So I reckon he still must have inquired about Goku, even though he hasn't fought him yet. So he must have inquired, and then he must have found out that he can't be activated for a year. And this is where I believe the events that occurred in Immortal Zamasu's timeline versus our present timeline were identical. Aside from all of that constant pestering and visiting from Goku. So Goasu, if he was supposed to get killed in our present time, he got killed in Immortal Zamasu's time. So Goasu might be dead from the T. If that's what's supposed to happen, that's exactly what happened in his timeline. Now, what I want to establish is he must have done what Whis' theory was suggesting, which is take the time ring, skedaddle 1 year into the future, take a leap into the future, and do the whole Dragon Ball shenanigan, make himself immortal. And he basically must have somehow, I personally think that the time ring, can it take you to alternative worlds rather than the future of its current world? That hasn't been told yet. So I don't know if he's used the green rings to somehow end up in Trunks' timeline. But my thinking is that if he did go to the alternate world that was created, that's where he could have potentially had the opportunity to sort of like make himself into, black. So, getting future Trunks' Zamasu involved into it and getting him to be sort of Goku Black. But that's where I'm kind of at the moment in regards to what I think about his timeline in terms of Immortal Zamasu. That's why he's still alive, because there was no suspicion raised within his timeline. So he probably just, got away with all of that. And yet still, in his timeline, I don't think anyone even noticed. Meaning, in his timeline, Goku's probably not noticed, Zamasu or anyone hasn't noticed. Because he was 1 year into the future, when he done that whole Super Dragon Ball fiasco thing. But then that, actually, you know what, that raises an interesting question, because if he had gone into the future of his existing world and done that whole Super Dragon Balls thing, and then he goes back into the present timeline, what would happen 1 year later? Would the balls magically come together by themselves because that event had already unfolded? Or has he, by going into the future, by 1 year or whatever it is, when he returns, that doesn't create a new world, does it? Because that would mean that if Goasu went 1,000 years into the future, that would create a green ring, but it didn't. So that tells me that he's safe to travel with the time ring, up and down, which wouldn't really create a green ring. So that's kind of interesting, because that means that basically it has... See, that doesn't make sense then, because if he goes back into the present timeline, what's going to happen 1 year later? Because he done something 1 year into the future. So what actually happens once it hits, 1 year? Does the balls magically go by themselves? Do they disappear and then they split again? I can imagine that happening, like the balls just randomly just scatter by themselves 1 year later, and people are thinking, what just happened there? Obviously someone who's clever like Reese would suss it out straight away that obviously someone's used the balls and they used a bit of time travel to do it, because obviously we never saw the dragon come out or the wish being granted. All we saw were the balls just got split up, and Zuno would probably know that. Zuno, yeah, but that means that the present timeline Zuno would know, not as Zuno, meaning Immortal Zamasu Zuno, not as Zuno. Yeah, that's a bit of a flaw, to be honest. That is a massive flaw. But yeah, I reckon, I'm 100% sure that in his timeline, he's pretty much undercover. But, I'm surprised that Zuno or someone hasn't called him out on it. Because, don't forget, even though he's moved forward in 1 year and made that wish, surely Zuno must know. Or someone who's, higher up must know that, hold on, something's happened. Unless no one's really paying attention to him. No one's really paying tabs, keeping tabs on him. But let me know what you guys think. Do you really feel that maybe Immortal Zamasu's timeline, no one's really paying attention to him whilst all of this is going on? Or do you really believe that maybe they were after him and he kind of pegged it, he ran away to, Trunks' timeline by using the green rings? Let me know what you guys think.